Previously on Picking Apart the Self.
Too much of the time, I think adults like to convey to children that they know everything, that they have it all pulled together, that they don't get angry, I have found it to be very effective when I share challenges that I've had interpersonally. I think it would be very important for administrators to figure out what can we reveal about ourselves in terms of when we've had to confront racism with ourselves. It's important for students to see the administrators and the teachers role modeling this behavior.
This is To the Max, advice from today's experts to tomorrow's leaders. Whether it's school, work, or life in general, conversations are crucial to understanding others and ourselves. In part 4 of this series on authenticity in business, academia, and society, Dr. Opie introduces us to her acclaimed shared sisterhood framework, the history that inspired its creation, and the values that underpin it.
And I guess since we're talking about conversations, I was wondering if you could talk a bit about your shared sisterhood framework and kind of how that works. You can introduce that.
Oh, thank you. So I'll be brief because I'm pretty verbose. This is just fun to me to talk. This conversation is fun. So shared sisterhood is an idea that happened maybe 15 years ago. And I didn't come up with the term shared sisterhood. It was a group of scholars who did, but I was tasked with developing the idea. And when I began to sit down and think about what shared sisterhood could mean, I was looking at my workplace, and as a Black woman, I noticed that there were mostly white women in the space. And I'm sitting here saying, if feminism is a thing, if we believe that there's gender inequity at work, why haven't Black and white women and Asian women and Hispanic women, Latinx women and Middle Eastern women come together to address this collectively? And then I realized that there was a lack of trust. And my husband is a history professor. And so I started to read books on the history of the workplace and some of the movements, like the suffrage movement. I literally started to look at the history of that and saw that there was a lack of trust, but there was also a lack of empathy. There was also a lack of vulnerability. And there was finally a lack of risk-taking. So those 4 components that I just listed are the critical components of shared sisterhood. And the idea is that if and when we can become fluent in those attributes, we are more likely to link arms and engage in collective action to improve our situations. And what shared sisterhood is about, there's a process, and I call it the dig and bridge. So dig is focused on the self. And it is where I encourage people to really understand their perceptions. Let's say we're talking about racial ethnicity. What are your perceptions of racial ethnicity? What do you think about Black people, about Asian people, about Hispanic people, about white people? Where do those assumptions come from? Is it your own individual thought? Is it because of your family? Do your perceptions differ greatly from your families, or are they exactly the same? Do they come from a religious influence? To really dig and understand those and interrogate them. And be honest with yourself. Because a lot of times people lie, oh, everybody is cool. And then we start talking about, well, what if a Black man dated your daughter, or an Asian woman married your son, or et cetera, et cetera? How would you feel then? Or moved next to you, or became your boss? So when those questions are asked, different different emotional responses are typically triggered. And I ask that part of the dig process is to write down, how do you feel about this? I argue with my co-author, Dr. Beth Livingston, because we have a book coming out with Harvard called On Shared Sisterhood coming out next year. And when we argue that it's only when you've done the dig process that you're then ready to bridge, which is connecting with people across difference. So it's important that we know sort of if we're trying to connect with somebody who has a different racial ethnicity than you, it is important to first understand your own racial ethnicity, your assumptions about yourself and other people, because when you then try to connect with others, you're less likely to do harm. When I do shared sisterhood and we make people vulnerable, I encourage people from the power dominant group to make themselves vulnerable first. And why do I do that? Because sometimes in these settings, it becomes a situation where the historically marginalized people are leading the conversations, are doing the action planning.
Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it and discovered something you can apply in your own life. If you liked what you saw, please like and subscribe. See y'all next time.